want to die today? We die like warriors!
In the 13th century, Mongol forces swept across Eastern Europe. Led by the ruthless general Burunda Khan, they destroyed villages and left survivors fleeing into the Carpathian Mountains. Hidden valleys became the last refuge for those who escaped. But in one of these valleys, a new resistance was about to awaken. This is the Rising Hawk. One of these valleys held the village of Tukla. Dense forests surrounded it, and a massive stone dam gave protection. The village was led by Zahar Barkut, a respected elder known for his wisdom. His wife, Rada, was supportive and strong, standing by him in every decision. Together they raised 2 sons. Ivan, the eldest, was calm and thoughtful, a natural leader who set an example for others. Maxim, the younger, was bold and impulsive but carried a noble heart. Both brothers trained since childhood in hunting and combat, ready for the day Mongols might strike. Their closest friend, Petro, was the village blacksmith. Though less aggressive than the brothers, his skill in forging weapons and his courage in battle made him invaluable. Trouble soon arrived. The villagers found their sheep burned and their stables destroyed. All signs pointed to Tugervovk, the arrogant lord of Gallic. He despised the mountain folk and treated them as peasants beneath him. Zahar knew he could not act alone. Tradition required a council, and for that, Tuger's presence was needed. To secure it, Zahar devised a plan. Under the pretext of a bear hunt, he sent Maxim to lead an expedition and invite Tuger to Tukla. The next morning, Maxim and Ivan guided a group of hunters into the forest. They followed the tracks of a bear that had long threatened the villagers. Suddenly, a woman's scream echoed from a ravine. Maxim rushed to the sound and found a young woman in fine clothing trapped at the bottom. She was Myroslava, daughter of Tuger. She had ventured into the forest alone, seeking freedom, only to fall into danger. Her cries woke a bear from its den. The animal moved toward her, sensing prey. Without hesitation, Maxim climbed down. Ivan and Petro held their ground above, ready to help. A brutal fight followed. Maxim faced the bear with axe in hand, while the beast struck with claws and teeth. After a fierce struggle, the bear fell. Myroslava was saved. At that moment, Tuger and his guards arrived. He tried to take his daughter away without thanks, but Myroslava spoke up, telling him Maxim had saved her life. Tuger asked Maxim what reward he wanted. Maxim refused gifts and instead asked for Tuger's presence in Tukla to help settle the conflict. Tuger dismissed the idea, unwilling to sit with mountain villagers. Myroslava stepped in, insisting it was the least her father could do after her rescue. Reluctantly, Tuger agreed. That night, however, he locked her in her room, forbidding her from taking any more risks. Yet Myroslava was not easily subdued. When Maxim climbed to her window from the rooftop, she was struck by his boldness. He invited her to the village festival the next day, and she agreed. The following evening, Myroslava slipped out of her room and joined Maxim. At the festival, he introduced her to his family and the villagers. They welcomed her with warmth. The lively music, the laughter, and the sense of kinship were unlike anything she had known in her father's world of privilege. Maxim also told her the legend of the great stone at the village dam. According to tradition, the stone had once been a wise giant, cursed by the goddess of death to guard the valley for eternity. The story gave Tukla an aura of mystery and sacredness in her eyes. The next morning, after Myroslava returned home, Rada, Ivan, and several villagers departed for Korin to meet neighboring leaders and form an alliance against the Mongols. Maxim stayed behind, hunting in the forest with Petro. On their way, a panicked villager stumbled out of the woods. His face was pale, his voice shaking as he spoke. He had escaped Korin and brought news of horror. He claimed the town had been burned to the ground by black-clad horsemen who slaughtered without mercy, sparing neither women nor children. Fearing for their mother, Ivan ordered Maxim to warn their father in Tukla. Then Ivan, Maxim, and Petro rushed toward Korin to find the survivors. What they saw upon arrival shook them. The once peaceful town lay in ruins. Flames consumed homes, bodies filled the streets, and the air reeked of smoke and blood. Amid the devastation, they found Maxim's uncle, mortally wounded. With his last breaths, he revealed that Rada and several others had been taken alive. Moments later, he died. Following the trail, they discovered a raiders' camp where the captives were held. The sight was brutal. Prisoners were tortured for sport, arrows driven into their bodies as entertainment. The 3 friends acted quickly. Maxim moved to rescue his mother, who who was being dragged by a guard. Ivan and Petro rushed to break open the cages. They freed the prisoners, including a man named Bohun, who was moments from death. The battle erupted at once. Ivan shot a guard with his bow. Maxim cut down several raiders in close combat. The captives escaped, but in the chaos, Maxim lost the lucky charm necklace he had carried since childhood. There was no time to retrieve it. The survivors fled into the night, but the raiders pursued them. Exhausted, they took shelter in a cave, where they faced a new blow. Radha had suffered a deep wound to her stomach. Despite their efforts, her strength faded, and she died in the arms of her sons. Her loss broke them, but grief soon hardened into resolve. For Ivan and Maxim, the pain of their mother's death became a fire that fueled their vow for vengeance against the Mongol forces. At the same time, in the Mongol camp, Burunda Khan discovered the body of his son, killed during the rescue of the captives. His fury deepened when he saw a necklace clutched in the dead boy's hand, a clue that would lead him to those responsible. Back in Tukla, after Radha's burial, Tugur arrived as promised. But instead of honoring the agreement to hold council, he came to expel the villagers. He claimed the land belonged to Gallic, pointing to an agreement signed only on his terms. Zahar refused the claim. He challenged Tugur to settle the dispute with a duel. The stakes were clear. If Tugur won, Tukla would submit to his authority and Maxim would serve as a slave in his household. If Tugur lost, he would be forced to gather Gallica's army and unite against the Mongol threat. Maxim stepped forward to fight for his people. Ivan supported his brother and handed him the lucky charm necklace as a talisman. Armed with twin axes, Maxim entered the dueling ground against Tugur's lieutenant. He used speed and agility to counter the man's greater size and strength. The clash was intense. Maxim dodged strike after strike, answering with precise blows of his own. His timing and accuracy wore down his opponent until, at last, he struck the final blow. The lieutenant fell, defeated. But Tugur broke his word. He refused to honor the terms of the duel and threatened instead to expose Tukla's existence to the Mongols. Zahar condemned him as a coward unworthy of respect. Shamed before the villagers and pressed by their demands, Tugur finally yielded. Though reluctant, he agreed to unite Gallica's forces with Tukla's in preparation for the Mongol threat. Elsewhere, Burunda Khan plotted his revenge. He sent word to Tugur, threatening Miroslava unless he revealed who owned the necklace found in his son's hand. The threat to his only daughter left Tugur in a desperate bind. Soon after, Tugur's lieutenant reported grim news. A large Mongol force was already advancing toward Tukla. The village had little time. Everyone, including women and children, was mobilized to defend their home. At first, the battle seemed to favor Tukla. Enemy soldiers fell outside the village walls, and the defenders held their ground. But then the trap was revealed. The Mongols had been tipped off. Using information provided by Tugur, they launched a sudden ambush from multiple directions. Chaos erupted as the villagers, outnumbered and surrounded, faced the full might of the Mongol army. Still, they fought with desperate courage, defending every inch of their homeland. When the assault grew heavier, Maxim led the remaining fighters into a large house for cover. During the retreat, Bohun was struck by an arrow, and Petro struggled to pull it out before it claimed his friend's life. Soon after, Tugur arrived with a grim message from Burunda Khan. The Mongol general would hunt them down until every last villager fell by his hand. Tugur tried to convince the villagers he was still an ally, but by then, no one believed him. Burunda Khan ordered the house set ablaze. Flaming arrows rained down, and within moments the building was engulfed. Smoke choked the air as the fire spread, threatening to trap everyone inside. Amid the chaos, Maxim kept his composure. He devised a plan, using the thick smoke as cover for a surprise counterattack. At his signal, the fighters burst out of the flames, catching the Mongols off guard. The move worked. They cut down several enemies and broke free from the inferno. In the melee, Maxim once again faced Tugur's lieutenant. This time, he defeated him with clear, decisive force. The survivors fought their way clear and escaped into the forest. There, Maxim boldly confronted Burunda Khan. The general drew his bow and took aim, but before the arrow flew, Maxim hurled his axe. The throw disrupted the shot, but the arrow struck Ivan, who collapsed with a grievous wound. The sight drove Tugur into fury. He ordered flaming arrows to rain down on Maxim's forces. Yet Miroslava intervened, standing before her father. She declared she would no longer follow him, choosing instead to side with the people of Tukla, whose honor she now respected. Burunda Khan turned his wrath on Tugger. He vowed to drive his army into the Carpathians, burn Gallic, and destroy everything Tugger held dear, even his daughter. In that moment, Tugger realized he was nothing more than a pawn in the Mongol general's eyes. Meanwhile, Maxim and the others returned to the village in despair. Ivan's wound proved fatal. The arrow had been poisoned, and despite their efforts, he could not be saved. His death struck the Berkut family with devastating force, coming so soon after the loss of their mother. Ivan left behind a wife and young child, both now vulnerable. For Zahar and the village, the death of their heir was a crushing blow. For Maxim, it was another wound to his heart, one that deepened his resolve. Overwhelmed by grief, Maxim lashed out when Myroslava approached him. Yet over time, he recognized her loyalty and drew strength from her presence. She gave him the moral courage he needed to endure. At last, Zahar gathered the villagers and the fighters still able to stand. He presented a final plan: abandon Tukla and destroy the stone dam as the Mongols gave chase. The flood would wipe out the invaders and secure their people's freedom. The villagers accepted. They knew it meant losing their home, but it was the only path to survival. For them, this was no longer about land. It was about life and freedom. The next day, thousands of Mongol soldiers poured into the Carpathian Mountains. Maxim rallied the remaining defenders and formed a final line of resistance. At his signal, they pulled the ropes, unleashing the traps they had prepared.
And if we are to die today, we die like warriors! Yeah! On my command!
The first wave of attackers was crushed. For a moment, the defenders held their ground. Though their weapons were crude compared to the Mongols, their determination gave them the strength to push the invaders back. Bodies of fallen Mongols filled the battlefield. One survivor reported to Burunda Khan that a single villager had fought with the strength of 10 men. The general refused to believe it. In a rage, he tore open the messenger's throat and killed him on the spot. Burunda Khan then handed command to Tugger. Meanwhile, the villagers began preparing to abandon Tukla as planned. In the midst of the chaos, Maxim rescued a small child, refusing to leave the battlefield until the others had time to move toward the dam. But Tugger had his own plan. He devised a way to capture Maxim alive. Once taken prisoner, Maxim was forced to watch as Burunda Khan threatened his loved ones and promised to destroy his village. The general chose to torment him with despair rather than grant him a swift death. When Zahar learned of his son's capture, he still pressed forward. He ordered the villagers to continue with the plan to bring down the dam. But the task was impossible under the Mongols' relentless assault. Arrows rained down, forcing them back and buying the enemy time to strengthen their attack. The fighting grew harsher with every wave. In one clash, Zahar was struck by an arrow. Myroslava rushed to his side, determined to save the man she now saw as a father figure. Despite his wound, Zahar urged his people not to give up and continued to direct them. Myroslava returned to the battle, standing shoulder to shoulder with the defenders. Even Bohun, still weakened from his injuries, took up arms. His fury against the Mongols drove him back into the fight. As Burunda Khan advanced with his overwhelming forces, the defenders' hope began to fade. But at the decisive moment, Petro summoned his last strength. With one final effort, he wrenched the massive stone from its place. The dam collapsed. Water surged through the valley with unstoppable force, sweeping away the Mongol army in an instant. Thousands of soldiers, along with their horses and weapons, were drowned in the flood. Only Burunda Khan and Tugger survived, clinging to a tall rock as the waters raged below. Though battered, Burunda Khan endured with 2 of his soldiers and Tugger. They still held Maxim captive. Meanwhile, Myroslava managed to pull Zahar to safety, along with her sister-in-law and Bohun. Cornered, Tugger made one last offer. If Zahar gave him a path to escape, he would spare Maxim and let them live. Zahar answered with an arrow, loosed straight at him. Burunda Khan reacted instantly, ordering Maxim's execution. As the blade was about to fall, Tugger turned on his own men. He cut Maxim free, then killed the 2 Mongol lieutenants in a desperate bid to redeem himself. Tugger tried to finish Burunda Khan as well, but the general proved stronger. With a single strike, Burunda Khan stabbed him down. Before collapsing, Tugger tossed his sword to Maxim, urging him to fight. The final battle erupted. Maxim faced Burunda Khan in brutal combat. Myroslava could only watch in horror as Maxim was struck again and again, nearly falling to the seasoned warrior. Yet he refused to surrender. At the decisive moment, Maxim rose once more and drove the sword into Barunda Khan, delivering the fatal blow in vengeance for his family and village. The general who had spread terror across countless lands fell to the hands of a young man from a mountain village. Nearby, Zahar lay mortally wounded. With his last breath, he entrusted Maxim to Myroslava. His death marked the passing of an era and the start of a new chapter for Tukla survivors. Though long dismissed as peasants by the city folk, the people of Tukla had proven their worth. Nobility was not measured by caste, but by unity and courage in the fight for freedom. So the moral of the story is, don't mess with villagers who own a dam.